Welcome to the CareFinity Downtime demonstration. My name is Shauna Wilburn, and I'm joined today by our Chief Technology Officer, Vic Shashadri. We are here today to talk with you about CareFinity Downtime. CareFinity Downtime is a software solution that we built, implement, and support here at MedTech Solutions, or you may know us as MTS. The software was created to provide practices with a comprehensive business continuity solution. Relying on paper during planned or unplanned outages, from severe weather to software transitions, network downtime, is just not a safe or secure option. With no access to patient records and schedules, it's nearly impossible to run a clinic and continue to see patients. Even planned outages, such as routine updates, maintenance, things like that, require access to a comprehensive patient record. CareFinity Downtime is the solution to help your organization with these needs. So let's take a look at the CareFinity application and allow us an opportunity to show you a little bit about what it has to offer. Vic, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Shauna. Today we're going to be talking about CareFinity Downtime. This is our solution for being able to access records when you don't have access to your EHR, as Shauna just talked about, whether that's for a planned or an unplanned event. The ability to go in and view patient data, both financial and clinical data, and to be able to capture a document or a note are critical in a downtime scenario. I'm going to log into the application. CareFinity Downtime is accessed through a browser. That browser will connect to the application depending on how it's deployed and what your downtime needs are. That may be cloud deployed. It may be deployed locally at your organization. It may be at one of your satellite locations. Again, depending on the downtime scenario that's the biggest concern for the organization, the solution can be architected accordingly to be able to access the information when there is a downtime. I'm going to go ahead and put in my username and password and log into the application. CareFinity is MFA protected, so it's asking me for my MFA, which I'll get from my cell phone here and type in, and then it's going to let me into the application. The default page in Downtime is the appointment schedule. So based on the user that's logged in, you will inherit some information based on how you're configured in the HR as to default provider information, and that's who you'll see in the schedule when you come in. The schedule will show me all the patients on the visit for that particular provider. You have the ability to toggle between provider and resource based on how your system stores scheduling information. And then you'll be able to change the provider or resource by clicking on the drop down here and selecting a different one if that's appropriate. Or you can change date as well by clicking in this field and getting a calendar that you can choose the appropriate date from here. On the appointments themselves, you'll see the time of the appointment, the patient's name, the subject of the appointment, which are going to be any notes that were captured in the appointment scheduling process. The reason for the appointment is the type of visit that they're coming in for, and what is the current status of that appointment. So a few things to note here. CareFinity is designed to work with multiple systems. And so our nomenclature is really a superset of nomenclature. So while it may not be exactly the same to what you're used to with your EHR, the general information conveyed is the same. I have the ability to open up patients right from the schedule by clicking on the patient icon. And if I do that, it takes me into the patient's CareFinity chart. I'm going to run through the data that's available in the CareFinity chart to give you an idea of what's available. But one of the things that we try to do with CareFinity is to make it very intuitive. We know as a downtime solution, it's not something your team is in on a daily basis. And so we don't want there to be a huge learning curve when you go back in to use CareFinity. So we leveraged a lot of the same design and tool ideas that users are used to using on the browser. So things like your banking and your shopping or your airline websites that let you go in and navigate and get information that you're after. We tried to mimic some of the same workflows and usability in CareFinity. When you come into the patient's record, you're going to come into what we call our patient dashboard, which is summary clinical information about that patient. At the top of the page, you're going to get a header that shows you demographic information about that patient. At the very left is a patient picture if it's available in your source system. And then demographic data, the patient's name, their gender, their medical record number, date of birth, age, contact information, address and phone, as well as insurance and pharmacy information are available for you here. Underneath that, you're going to see summary clinical data, the patient's diagnosis history, their allergy history, their med history, visits, labs, and order history. And what you'll see are the 5 most recent chronologically descending. So the most recent set of data available for that patient are going to show up right at the top there. So it gives you a quick snapshot of what's going on with this patient. Additionally, when I opened that patient, it opened up a navigation here on the left-hand side. These are all the different items in the patient's CareFinity chart that we're going to go through and look at here today to get an idea of the kind of data that's available in the system. The second tab here, the patient timeline, is also a summary view that you have available. You can toggle back and forth between them as you're using the system, as I'm doing here. One of the configurations that will work with your team on as we bring CareFinity up is the default page that you would like. So as an organization, you can choose what you want to have default, whether you want the dashboard, the more longitudinal view of the data, or the timeline, the more graphical view of the data, to be the default when you come in. They're both still available to your user. So if you opt to have the timeline as the default view, your user can switch to the dashboard if they want to get that longitudinal view broken out by the different data elements. But here I'm able to see the patient's entire record at a glance. What are the different things that have occurred to this patient over time? If something's of interest to me and I want to drill into a specific section, I can zoom into the timeline and look at things by specific dates. So, for example, what happened here in April of 2023? I can see all of the different clinical events that have occurred for this patient. If I wanted to see details on those events, I could click on them and get pop-ups. So, for example, if I wanted to look at this medication to see what was prescribed here, I can do that, and I will see the different meds that were prescribed in January of 2012, or in this case, February. Cancel will take me back to the listing. If I wanted to look at a different data element, I could do that. You can get all sorts of information from here. I can look at notes the patient may have from clicking on here. I can look at scanned image data as well from within here. If I wanted to pull up images that the patient has in their record, I can view those from within the timeline view. So it gives you a very time-centered view of what's happening with the patient and the ability to drill in and view that data from right here. The remainder of the sections break out by type and give me details so I can view all of the different information that's available for that particular section. We'll start off with the diagnosis, and it's going to give me the patient's diagnosis history. You'll see the visit date the diagnosis was captured or used on, the onset date if it was captured, the code and condition, the current status of that diagnosis, the diagnosed date if it's available, and whether or not it's a resolved diagnosis or problem. A few things to note here that you're going to see over and over as we go through the application. The first is we do page all of our data in CareFinity. This is done so that you can get a pretty robust experience using CareFinity over the web and really can introduce things like cellular-based access as part of your downtime solution. So if I want to provide tablets that are connected to cellular connectivity in the event of an outage, my team can use these tablets to access CareFinity. That could be a viable use case scenario for you here. In the demo here, I'm running CareFinity through the internet. The server that it's housed on is located in our Chicago data center. I'm down in Houston, Texas, accessing the information, and you can get an idea of the robust experience you can expect when accessing CareFinity, even in that cloud-based mode where it's sitting in the cloud. The second thing is all of our column headers are sortable, where you see this up and down arrow. The first time you click on it, it's going to do an ascending sort of the data. The second time, it's going to do a descending sort of the data. You'll notice it sorts the entire data set, not just the page that you're viewing when you do that. So if there's a particular view you want to have or look for specific date or things like that, you can sort by that appropriate column. Additionally, all of our screens have a filter criteria or a search criteria that you can search for things. You could put in a keyword and search for that keyword, and it's going to give you everything that meets that criteria. It is an intelligent search, so it's going to search across all of the different columns. So I could search for a date, I could search for a code, I could search for a description like I did here. and it's going to give you everything that meets that criteria. The last common component you're going to see is the ability to print. So every data sheet or every data section, I should say, has the ability to print data. This is a user right, so you can define roles that have the print capability, and you can define roles that don't have the print capability. So depending on the security you want to allow and what you want to allow for your users, you may or may not enable this feature for your users in the system. Allergies are going to show me the patient's allergy history. Here we have the visit date the allergy was captured on, the onset date and resolve date if they're available, the ingredient or allergen that the patient has in their system, any brand name information associated with it, the patient's reaction, and the prescribing provider are available to you here. Medications will show me the patient's medication history. Here you have the start date of the med, the medication and dose, quantity and refills are available to you here, the stop date of the med, and the prescribing provider as well. Visits will show me the patient's visit history. This gives you a snapshot of where the patient has been within the organization. You'll see the date of the visit, the type of visit that they came in for, any details associated with that visit, the rendering provider they saw, and the location they saw them. So a quick snapshot, where's this patient been within my organization? Labs will show me the patient's laboratory history. Labs will show the patient's lab results in CareFinity. We do that by panel in CareFinity. At the top of the page, you're going to have a drop down of all the different panels this patient has had, along with the count of the number of times we have data for a particular panel. The list is unique to that patient based on the results that we have available for that patient. So it will always default to the first test alphabetically. So in this case, the CBC, but if I wanted to look at that hemoglobin A1C, I could do that by clicking on that as well. If you click on the lab result, if there are details available, you'll see details associated with that, including things like reference ranges and comments, if they're appropriate in there. This test patient doesn't have a lot of robust data, so let's move to a different test patient to take a look at their lab data. I'm going to go up to patient search, and this allows me to pull up patients by searching my patient book. We open the first patient by doing it from the appointment book. Here I'm going to search by demographics. You can use the last name, the first name, the date of birth, and the medical record number, or any combination of that to search for those patients. You do so by putting in a couple letters of the last name and maybe a letter of the first name, and it's going to go out and find everybody that meets that criteria. You'll see the medical record number, the name, the social security number if it was captured, the date of birth, the gender, and the address of that patient. And similar to the appointment book, I can come in and open that patient from within here. When I do that, it's going to take me back to that default homepage, which in my case is the dashboard. If I'd set it up as the timeline, I would go right into the timeline for that patient. And then I could come over here and go back to labs. So we do color code the labs as you would expect. If the lab was an alert or a high value in your EHR, it's going to appear red in CareFinity. If it was a low value in the EHR, it's going to appear blue in CareFinity. If I switch, I can drop down to the panels here and switch to a different panel. If I have more than one result available, you'll see the results chronologically descending to the right. The first column is going to be the most recent results that we have for that particular panel, and then it's going to move down to the right chronologically. You can trend lab data in CareFinity, so we give you the ability to trend the results. By clicking on the trend icon, it's going to generate a graph for all of the different nitrogen values that we have for this patient. In this case, there are only two, so it's not a very meaningful graph, but certainly if there's more data available, you'd be able to see that here. Cancel will take me back to my lab listing. If I wanted to look at a different lab, I could do that from here as well. Now I'm going to go back to that previous patient we had opened. One of the features we have in CareFinity is the ability to track the last 5 patients that you visited by going to the recently visited section here. So if I need to go back to a patient that I previously looked at, I don't have to go searching for them. I could use this feature to launch them directly. Once I'm back in that patient, it's going to go back to that home page, which in this case is the dashboard. And then I can come into my next section here, which are orders. Orders are going to show me the patient's order history, the date of the order, the type, the description, the current status of that order, and who placed that order in the system. Similar to the other sections, we do have a filter available to you, but we also give you the ability to filter by order type. So if I'm looking for something very specific, like an immunization, for example, I could filter by the order type and select that immunization, and I'd be able to see all of the different immunizations this patient has had from within here. I can still filter down if I'm looking for something specific, like for flu, for example, and I could search, and it's going to filter down to all of the different flu immunizations that this patient has had in their record. So you can drill down into the data of interest for you here using a combination of these filters on the order tab. Vitals are going to show me the patient's vitals history. You'll see the date as the first column. It's chronologically descending, so the most recent vitals data is going to be available at the top of the list here. You'll have the patient's height, their weight, their BMI, their blood pressure, their pulse, their resps. I'm sorry, their temperature, their resps, their pulse ox, and their head circumference. Whatever was captured at that visit, that's the data that you're going to see here. So you can see I've got some holes in terms of data that's not captured because my clinic just didn't grab those vital measurements. Similar to the labs, you can trend vitals data. So if I wanted to look at this patient's weight over time, for example, I could come into my trend line here. I could choose to trend by weight, and it's going to plot all of the different weight elements that are available for that patient. So I can get an idea of how that patient's weight has fluctuated over time. Cancel will take me back. If I wanted to plot a different vital measurement, I could certainly do that as well. For all the pediatricians, we also include growth charts in CareFinity. So if I wanted to look at uh, uh, growth charts for the patient, maybe there's an outage and I'm doing a well child visit, I need to look at the historic growth of that patient. This is where the growth chart comes into play. I can launch the growth chart by clicking on it. It's going to ask me for which chart I would like to create based on the patient's gender, and you can pick the one that's appropriate for what you want to look at. I'm going to go ahead and generate one, even though this is an adult patient, just so you can get an idea of what that process looks like. If I choose the chart I want, I say done, then CareFinity will generate that growth chart for me. If there was any data that met this criteria, meaning being within the first 3 years of life, it would plot that data on the graph for me and provide it in this template for me as well. Once I have the growth chart up, I could zoom into it if I wanted to discuss this with the parents on screen. I could print it if I wanted to plot today's visits, vitals on there, for example, and provide that to the parents. Cancel will take me back to the vitals listing. If I wanted to look at a different growth chart, I could certainly do that as well from here. Documents are going to be all of the visit notes that are available in CareFinity. The documents will allow me to capture or view, I should say, any notes that have been generated on the patient, whether those are progress notes, phone call notes, intake notes, anything that's sent to you by an interface that's a document, maybe a discharge summary or something like that may appear in this section as well. The way we do that in CareFinity is we give you a default listing that shows you everything this patient has had chronologically descending. The number one piece of feedback we get from users in CareFinity is the first thing that the provider wants to do in a downtime situation is look at the last note. What is the last thing that happened to this patient within the organization? So when you come into the documents in the All tab, that's going to be right here at the top of the list. You're going to be able to see that right away, launch it right away, go in and view that note from within here. All of your notes are viewable in CareFinity under the All tab. I'm going to see the date and time of the visit under which that note was captured, the description of that note, the user that created it, the create date and time. The format is really for our use to be able to generate the document for you to view. And then you can always come in and view that note. When you do that, it's going to bring up that note in a viewer where I can view that entire document. If I have rights to print, similar to the other sections, I could print that document out using the print icon here in the top right corner. Back will take me back to my document listing. If I wanted to look at a different document, I could do that from here. Also, to the right of our All tab, we have separate pillboxes for each of the document types. So if I'm looking for something specific, I can click on that pillbox and I'll see all of the different instances of that particular document type. So it gives me the ability to view it chronologically so I can get that last note. And then it gives me the ability to drill into a specific document type. So once my provider has seen the last note, maybe they want to go in and look at a certain document type, they can click on that and pull that up and view that from within here. Images are going to show me any scanned image data that's attached to the patient's record. We do that by the image category. So at the top of the page, you're going to see all of the different image categories this patient has in their record. When you open that image, we have two options to view that. You have a thumbnail view, which is what you see here. That lets you view that image thumbnail and open that image from within here. And then you have a list-based view as well, which will show you all the documents via a list. So as an organization, you'll make the decision during implementation of what type of view you want to have here, and we'll configure that accordingly. If I click on a category, I will see all the documents from within that category, again, along with some details associated with that down here to be able to view that. In that previous scenario I talked about where I might have a discharge summary that comes in and I'm able to view it under documents, it's very possible it could be here as well. So depending on how that integration occurs with your hospital system, they may send that as a document, in which case it's going to go into the document section of CareFinity. They may send it as a scanned image, in which case it's going to go into the image section of CareFinity. So it really depends on how you're connected to that system as to where those documents are going to go. Financials shows me patient financial data. The way we do that in CareFinity is we give you a summary across all time. So at the top, you're going to see total charges, total payments, total adjustments for this patient, and then anything that's outstanding. What's due to the primary payer, secondary payer, the tertiary payer, what's due from the patient, what's due from a collection agency. One thing to note here is based on your source system, we may not have information in terms of each of the payers' responsibility, in which case everything is then displayed under the COB1 column or the primary payer's responsibility within CareFinity. Underneath the totals, you're going to have the same thing at a visit or an encounter level. You'll see the visitor encounter number, the date, the rendering provider on that visitor encounter, and then that same summary information. So the total charges, total payments, total adjustments, and where are things outstanding. I'm going to go to page 2 of my data set here because I've got some more information available. And we're going to drill into one of these encounters. When I do that, it takes me to my encounter details, which shows me more information about that particular encounter. The first page is my insurance information. So who was the primary insurance on that visit? Who was the secondary insurance? Who was the tertiary insurance? Will be available to you here. The encounter details is going to show me all of the different charges from that encounter. You'll see the data service of the charge, the procedure code, the charge amount, the paid amount, the adjusted amount, any balance that's left over, and where that balance sits. So again, is it due to the primary, the secondary, the tertiary payer? Is it sitting with the collection agency as bad debt? I'm sorry, in this view, it's just the patient amount that's available. The bad debt was on the previous view. If I drill into a charge, I can see all of the different transactions associated with that charge. You'll see the date of the transaction, the type, is it an adjustment, is it a payment, the code associated with it, any tracking information that's associated with that transaction. So if I'm capturing a check number or a credit card authorization number, I would be able to see that here. And then finally, the amount. What's my payment amount? What's my adjusted amount from within there? Cancel will take me back to my details listing. If I wanted to look at a different charge, I could certainly do that from here. And then finally, the last tab are your encounter notes. These are all the billing notes that you're creating in the PM. Those can be available here in CareFinity as well. So I could come in here and view the billing history on that patient from all of the different notes that have been captured on that patient by coming into this tab here. Once I'm done, I can click on back. It'll take me back to my financial module. If I wanted to look at a different encounter, I could certainly do that from here as well. Okay, I'm back at the login screen because when I was on the financial tab, I noticed that we had not enabled a couple of the downtime features that are really critical for downtime, and that's the ability to capture a patient note. In CareFinity, everything we've looked at to date is read-only data from your EHR and PM system. But now I want to be able to put information back in. So I've enabled those sections. I'm going to log back into the application now, and we'll talk through what that looks like. So I'm going to log back in now, and it's going to ask me for that MFA code again. So let me grab that. And then it's going to take me back into the application. We're going to jump right back into Grace's chart. And you'll notice now here I've got a couple of additional options in my toolbar, the ability to capture a patient note and the ability to put charges in. So CareFinity Downtime allows you to put documentation back into the system in the form of a note, either as a free text note or a template-driven note. Once that note is saved, it's available in CareFinity immediately for continuity of care. So if my system is unavailable, a patient comes into the clinic, they're seen by the provider, they go home, the system is still unavailable. The patient calls in for a medical question. The triage team can go into CareFinity, they can open up that patient's record, they can see that note in CareFinity. So it's available right away for your entire team. Once connectivity is restored, that note can be pushed back into your source EHR. So again, as part of your configuration, we'll have that discussion with your team to see if that's something that you want. And if it is, we'll enable it so that when connectivity is restored, that will automatically get pushed back into the EHR. I'm going to click on the patient note tab, and it's going to take me into my note entry. The default is a free text note. I can give it a title here. So for example, if I want to call it a progress note, the data service will default to today always. If I needed to change that, I certainly could. So if I got a call while I was at my kid's baseball game and I didn't want to put it into the system and I want to do it the next day, I could change the date here and capture that in there. I'll choose the provider on behalf of whom I'm creating this note. Category to push that note back into when it goes into my EMR. So this is going to be a list of categories from your EHR system. And so I can select the category that I want, and then I can start typing my note here. It's got some simple word processing capabilities. If your browser supports it, you have a spell checker available so that I can do a spell check there. You've got some font control, some bold, italic, underline control, sizing control, bullets and numbering that you can put in. So you can create the note as is appropriate for you. Once you're complete, you can hit save, and that note becomes, like I said, part of the patient's CareFinity record. If I jump back to the Images tab, we had a category called CareFinity or HIE Documents. If I click on that, this is where I'm going to find documents or notes that have been created in the system before they're pushed back into my EHR. If I enable EHR pushback, when that happens, that note is going to move into the appropriate category based on how it was created. So in my sample note there, I selected the category of progress notes. So when that note gets pushed back into the EHR, it's going to move from the CareFinity category to the progress notes category because now it's part of the patient's record on the EHR side. The other option, as I talked about, is to use a note template. So again, I'm going to come back in here and I'm going to try my progress note again. I'm going to select the provider. I'm going to select a category, in this case, progress notes. And then I have the option to select a template. So I'm going to choose this downtime progress note. And what you'll notice is the word processing box that was here before is replaced by a form. CareFinity has a built-in form designer that your team can use to build forms within CareFinity. So in this case, here's this downtime progress note form that I've put in here just to capture information. But to give you an idea, it does include some complex features like putting in a signature box to be able to capture a patient's signature if that makes sense for the organization. Again, once I've completed this note, I can click save, and it's going to become part of the CareFinity record. And then when connectivity is restored, if it's been enabled, it'll get pushed back into the EHR and become part of the patient's clinical record there. Charges allow me to capture my charges for the visit. When connectivity is restored, these charges are sent back to the PM system and made available in the PM system. Depending on your PM system, it could follow multiple workflows when that charge gets in there. The way that the charge capture works is you have to select a facility that you're putting this charge in for. It will default to the last facility that you put a charge in with if you've done so. But in this case, I'm just going to select the cardiology clinic. Who's the referring provider on this visit? It'll give me a list of all my referrings. I always like to pick the first thing alphabetically. And then who's the rendering provider on this? Again, if I've done previous charges, it's going to default to that and pull that up for me to give me a starting point here when dealing with that. The appointment screen is going to show me the last appointment for that patient and the next appointment for that patient. It'll also put in today's date by default for the service date. In terms of selecting the procedure code, we give you 3 palettes to choose from. These can be whatever your organization requires. In my system, I call it inpatient, outpatient, and office, but it can be labeled for whatever makes sense for your organization. In order to select that procedure code, I've got 3 palettes to choose from, as I talked about. I'm going to click on the inpatient palette, and it's going to give me a listing of all the codes that I've defined. So the clinic can decide what are the 3 different palettes I want to use and what are the codes on those palettes. As part of the configuration, we'll set that up for you so it's available from within here. I can select the procedure code corresponding to the visit that I performed from here, and it will bring that in. And then I can put in my diagnosis information and key in any modifiers. For the diagnosis entry, we have 2 options. If I click in this field, it's going to bring up a historical list of diagnoses for this patient. So if I want to reuse an existing diagnosis for that patient, I could do that from within here. Additionally, if I click on this field, it'll bring me into my diagnosis book. If I want to search for a new diagnosis for that patient, I can do that from here as well. We also give you the ability to put in procedure codes directly. So if I'm doing something on this patient that's not part of the 3 palettes, maybe I did an in-office procedure that I want to capture, for example, I could come in and search the procedure book by coming in here and searching by either code or description and being able to find what I'm after. So if I put in a 99213, for example, and search, it's going to give me a listing of everything that meets that criteria. I could select the code from here and then continue with selecting my diagnoses and my modifiers. Once I've put in all my information, I can submit that charge. It will be available to you in this list down here, so you'll get a historic record of all the charges that have been submitted from CareFinity. And then once connectivity is restored, that charge will be pushed back to your practice management system. So again, depending on how that's configured on your PM side and the workflow there, you'll deal with that charge accordingly in your PM system. The last section here, export clinical data, is really not used often in a downtime scenario. I do like to talk about it when I talk about downtime in case it has utility to some users, but this gives you the ability to export information out of CareFinity. You have the ability to select documents and images to export from within there. You can include discrete data elements if you would like to. You can also export a longitudinal CCDA from CareFinity from within the application. Once you've done an export, it maintains a history of everything that's been exported for that patient, chronologically descending. So you get visibility into everything that's been done by the organization. So you can always go back and look at what was exported by what user from the system. Additionally, everything that your users are doing in CareFinity is audited. And as an administrative user, you have the ability to run an audit log to be able to see what your users have been doing in the system. We also have an API available for SIM systems to be able to pull those API logs and bring that into the SIM environment so you can track it there as well. If I run into the view report section for your administrative users, they'll have the ability to launch a security report. I can come in here to my security report, and then I can come in to execute that report. It'll ask me for my username. In this case, I'm going to run it for myself so we can see what I've been doing in the system. We'll do it for today. We'll see what this demo utilized, and then I can load my report. And then what this is going to do is it's going to give me a detailed explanation of everything that I've done in the application. So down to the patients that I've looked at, the different data elements that I've looked at under that patient, the different images or documents that I've opened. So everything is available for me here. Here's my activity from today and being able to do this demo. So you have visibility into that. You can go back and view that information if you ever need to. And then you could also connect it to your SIM environment. These reports are also your ability to customize the views in CareFinity. They give you the ability to create these reports. They're crystal reports that we can tie into CareFinity when they've been built, and then you can make them available in the patient's record if I wanted to create a custom view of data that's not there already in CareFinity. That's the front end of CareFinity Downtime. Again, we've tried to make it as intuitive as possible so users can go in and find the information that they're looking at, be able to look at historic data and both a timeline and a longitudinal view so I can get insights onto what's happening with this patient in CareFinity. Shauna, I'm going to hand it back to you.
Wonderful demo, Vic. Thank you. Well, team, I hope this discussion has been beneficial for your needs and helped illustrate how CareFinity Downtime might benefit your organization. If we can provide any additional information or if you would like to schedule a live demo for your group, please do not hesitate to reach out. We would love to hear from you. Thank you for your time today.